this is continuing the conversations that we started at the EMCC Global Provider Summit in November last year. And we had such a fantastic buzz in the room, and everybody was excited to take all the conversations forward. And so we're so thrilled that Jo and Shirley have agreed to continue this conversation now about using creative tools in supervision and coaching. You don't want to hear from me. I'm going to hand you straight over to Jo and Shirley with thanks as well. And over to you, Jo and Shirley.
Hello, I'm Jo Birch, and you'll hear from Shirley very soon. In my screen, she's sitting right next to me here. The last time Shirley and I worked together, at the beginning, I thought, I'm going to tune into how I'm arriving in an image. And what came was a raspberry jelly. And actually, that wasn't really the image that I was hoping to invoke. And particularly because in my image, I'd been tipped out of a nice bronze container, but I hadn't been tipped out quite right, and I had some bits missing. And so I was a bit worried, but I was fine. And so I'm going to hold on to the fine bit and know that all will be well. And so today we're going to talk about creative approaches. And this is, thank you for inviting me, Nicola and EMCC. It's on the back of being a showcase program at the EMCC Global Providers Summit. And I was invited to that because of my work across cultures, particularly with Russia. And we've learned how to deliver programs in coaching supervision in multiple languages. And it's totally relevant to this conversation about creative approaches. When we're working with creative approaches, and what Shirley and I mean today, is really getting away from words and cognitive thinking. Creative approaches could be imagery, drawings, objects, movement, music, so many things. There are just so many ways that we can get away from thinking, and that circular process that can sometimes go on when we're trying to work something out. So one of the things working with creative approaches really calls on us to do is to become wholly cognizant and attentive to the language of the person we're working with. The language in the image and in the metaphor. Not the language we think the metaphor might be talking about, but what it really believes is in there. And noticing, and in order to do that, we often have to notice our own process. Notice where we have assumptions and judgments, of course, and ideas that we know the way it should be, and somehow we have to lay that to one side and give a lot of attention, wholly attentive to this image, and work out what's this image coming to say. And because often our work is within a coaching or coaching supervision contract, we're also holding the contract. So we're working with the image and holding the contract. What is it we're here to do today? And so at some point, finding the right moment to come out of the metaphor and into the question that the person has brought. So what is this telling you about our issue here today? So where would we begin? You probably all know by now, there is only one place to begin, and you are it. So to work with creative approaches, what we need to know is more about ourselves as the facilitator. One part about what is our relationship with creativity? What are those stories you've heard about yourself and drawing, yourself and being creative? I'm a really creative person, or I'm not really very creative, or I can't draw, or whatever it is, or I used to think I could sing and then somebody told me I couldn't. And so your relationship with creativity, but also your relationship with emergence and really holding the place of the unknown. Because we absolutely do not know where we're going to go with this image. Only the person who's created it has any chance of knowing where the image might go. and also where it comes from. So whilst I do think working with imagery is fun and it's light, it's also deeply personal and sensitive. What we're doing is inviting some of your psyche, something from your unconscious to make itself visible. And so in that, we need the utmost care and attention of the image and the person. And for my mind, requires the utmost daring to expose an image of your own and not know, where are we going with this? I've got no idea what this image might be here to do. So in preparing for today, one of the pieces of work I've done is working with sand trays and doing it like a Jungian sand tray work. And it's so brilliant because Carl Jung used to believe that the psyche knows what it needs to do to heal. So actually we know, and the person creating the image knows what to do with this. So we just need to keep out of their way. And Carl Jung said this great thing, well, I think it's great anyway, that, so I'm going to read it out and just do it slowly. So the creative process, so far as we are able to follow it, consists in the unconscious activation of an archetypal image and in elaborating and shaping this image into the finished work. By giving it shape, the artist translates it into the language of the present, and so makes it possible for us to find our way back to the deepest springs of life. Now, if that doesn't speak to how sensitive our work with imagery is for ourselves and others, we're tapping into the deepest springs of life. And so in our workshop today, we're mostly going to be talking about imagery. It's a dialogue session, and we will do lots of talking in the big group, through the chat, and in small groups. But just to be mindful that imagery, once we start it, it starts bubbling through. And so just be mindful of yourself and how deep this work can reach inside of us. So what we're doing, this is our process for our session today. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Shirley. And we want to tap into the edges of your creative centres just a little bit to get your juices flowing for the dialogue. And so there will be a tiny experiential piece at the beginning. But first, Shirley's going to find out what's brought you here. Then we're going to pick up some topics, then we're going to do some introductions and pick up some topics to work with in dialogue after that, and then break into some small groups and then work towards the end. I can tell Shirley took a breath, so I must have missed out something, so I'll go back to her in a minute. That's basically the outline, but do put your ideas at any point in the chat, and so both Nicola and Shirley and myself, all of us, will be monitoring the chat and picking up ideas that you might want to open as a conversation. And when we get to the middle bit, we'll just see what's around as to whether we stay in a big group or go into small groups. And we'll definitely be in one small group before the end. So let me check in with Shirley as to what it was I might have forgotten.
You did that so beautifully. Thank you, Jo. You didn't forget anything, as far as I can remember anyway. We're good. We're in a good place. So are we ready to move to the next bit?
We are.
We are. And what we want to do now is just make sure that everyone is familiar with the practical bits before we launch into the various things that we want to do, because at various times, Jo's just mentioned we want to be doing things in the chat. I just would like to make sure everyone knows how to work the chat. I don't want to assume that. And also we're going to play with a facility on Zoom, which as a coach or a supervisor, and you start to experiment with creative approaches, you might adapt on Zoom yourself if you're finding yourself having to work online like many of us are around the world right now because of the current circumstances. So to get us going, what I wanted to do, I can't see myself by the way now, so I'm just guiding. Does everybody know how to toggle up in the top right hand corner there? There's a place where you can toggle between gallery view and speaker view. If you're seeing the slide with networking in the top left hand corner right now, you're probably on speaker view. Am I right, Nicola? Are we in the right zone here?
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. It's exciting to use these different Zoom tools in this way. I think we've all become a little bit more adventurous with Zoom, haven't we? And so we're going to introduce, Shirley's introducing the concept of stamping. Yeah, so before we do that, I wanted to go into the chat box and just make sure everybody's getting the chat, but can you, so I don't know, what do you see on your screens now? Do you see the Zoom chat group thing either to the right of your screen or right in the middle of your screen? Yes. Lots of people are doing yes, yes, yes. Chat to the right of the screen, that's great. At the bottom for some. So do you see the bit where it says to everyone? So if you were sending a message where you are or something, is to everyone. And if you take your mouse very gently with your finger or your mouse to the right of that, you will see a box with 3 little grey dots. Navigate your way to there. And when you click on that, one of the options, the very top one, is Save Chat. So hopefully you're seeing that. So if there's things in the chat that somebody else types in, or there's a link there that you would like to capture, this is how you save it for later. And when you close Zoom down later on, it will, that little file will be available for you to save on your own desktop. So that's how you do the save chat. How is that so far? Have we got everybody? If we click twice, does it delete the first version? I'm not sure. Could you? You can also copy and paste, that's also true. Sometimes the chat can whiz by quite fast and it's quite hard, it can be hard to catch something. So that's why now I tend to do the save chat function. Lovely. So the next function we want to play with right now, I'm going to close the chat bit down for me so I can pay attention to something else, is I invite you to take your mouse to the top of the screen, to the very, very top of the screen, and you may or not see it right away. Sometimes you have to wiggle the mouse thing about a little bit right at the top of the screen, but you should have a green line that says you are viewing Nicola Brown's EMCC screen right now. And to the right of that is a little brown box which says View Options, and that's where we're heading now, to the View Options button. And when you press that, you should see a whole host of things. And we are going to go to the Annotate one, which is quite near the bottom. It's about 2/3 of the way down that list, and Annotate. Just give you a second to find it. I'm hoping everybody's still with us. If that's not working for you, perhaps you can write it in the chat and Nicola will have a look. Yeah, I think the iPad functionality, actually, come to think about it, Liz and Lindsay, isn't as widespread as us on the desktops and the laptops. But there should be some magic. Oh, crikey, there's annotations going all over the place.
Yeah, so yeah, I can see you're having loads of fun with that, just squiggling around, and actually it is something to play with quite a bit. So Nicola, how do we clear this now for our serious?
I've cleared it. I've cleared it. I have the power.
There we go, abracadabra. So as Jo was mentioning, we're working with imagery today, and this is our first dive into the imagery part. And the question really is what's brought you here? And here in the screen, you can see 4 images and a big yellow blob or dot or circle in the middle. And what we invite you to do is, if you go to that annotate box where you've just been doing things, the 1, 2, 3, 4th one in is stamp. And I invite you to choose a stamp and let us know. So Jo and I know which subject or area is it that's attracted you most to the session today, and place a heart somewhere around the topic. And if you're not sure that it's not specifically one thing in particular that you're more concerned with, yes, I can see lots of you are hearting away there in the middle. That's what that space is for. How fab!
Shirley, I can't see the titles of the 2 bottom ones on my screen, so it might be worth reading those out.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realise that. So the top left one is networking. The top right one is everything's new to me. So this creative tools in coaching or supervision is a new topic to you. And you're here to find out more. The bottom left is for CPD. So if you're particularly at the moment participating in things, so you can catch up your hours for that. That's, yeah, there's quite a few hearts in there. And the bottom left is you perhaps are already familiar with some creative approaches and you're looking for something to top up what you already know. How lovely. Somebody's making a heart out of hearts. And certainly when I'm supervising myself, I use this facility now, working remotely with my group participants. So do we have a consensus, Jo, where we want to put the majority of our emphasis here? I think it's... I
wouldn't like to say.
Yeah, there's certainly a number of people here for CPD, and there's, I would think the most dots seem to be on it's all new to me. Some
other seems quite popular.
Yeah, yeah, or it's maybe a bit of everything. So we may or may not play with this functionality again, but hopefully you can see some potential in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, there are things. I see somebody, you can actually control the colour of the icons. And so there are lots of things you can do once you get going with this. And it doesn't have to be this kind of screen. But it's nice to know a bit about why you've come. And if you'd like to put something in the chat about what's brought you here, what is it that's on your mind today that you want to make sure you cover in our dialogue session? Pop it in the chat for us and we'll have a look. So we're going to do some introductions with you in a minute, but I'm just going to do one more slide before we do that, so many years ago, maybe 10, no, maybe 20, oh dear, many more than I care to think about. And I began working with Liesl Silverstone. So she told me that her story was that as a small child, she was on the last train, kinder transport, out of Czechoslovakia. And that as a small child, her parents could only get one of them on the train, one of the children, as her and her brother. And so they put her on the train and her brother didn't get on. And the next train that went out of Czechoslovakia didn't make it. but all her family were taken to one of the concentration camps before being moved somewhere else, a Jewish family. And Liesl never saw them again. And she made her way eventually to England, to London. And some years later, she went back to Terezin, I think it was, the concentration camp, to understand some of her parents' journey. And she saw some imagery that had been made by the children of the camp with really the most meagre implements that they could find around the place that they were staying, around the camp. And she realized, she looked into it and realized that children were expressing and processing some of their pain through this imagery. And she went on to be an absolute pioneer in the psychotherapy field, finding a way to work with images in a way that stayed out of the way of the process of the person as much as possible, but facilitated. And so really our job, if this is the methodology that I was trained in and then went on to teach with Liesl. And one of the things, if anybody here knows Liesl, you will know that, we'll put her name in the chat, you will know that she's a very particular person. I tell you, that woman never missed a trick. If I interpreted anything, she would notice. And if I made any assumptions, and she would call us to account and ask us, is this the way that you do it? And so working with her was an absolute joy, and sharpened my practice absolutely no end in terms of not interpreting what somebody is saying, even in my coaching work and my counselling and other work that's language based, not imagery. So our job is to enable the images to arrive, find a way to get into some imagery, then facilitate something around the exploration of that, whilst also staying out of the way of the person and their processing, whilst staying really close and present to them in their process. So quite a lot of things without even going into the micro skills, that's just setting the container. But because, as I said before, about how sensitive and deeply personal imagery is, just why the container and the contract with people needs to be really clearly articulated and the edges held. Simple things like the time boundaries, but also the time that we're working with the image might be, depending on who it is, contracting how we're going to do it, what people need to say, what they don't. And that will just, that's a big exploration and comes with time. However, out of my work with Liesl, more recently I've created, oh, I don't know what you call this. Well, I'll just show you. I'll show you the slide. In fact, Nicola will show you the hearts slide. So Carl Jung used to, every day, he used to draw a mandala. And he used to use it as part of his reflective practice to check in with himself every day about how am I doing. And when we ever did mandalas with Liesl, she always put herself as a heart. And so my heart in the middle of this image is a nod to her and her work. She died 3 years ago. And what the image is in the center are three principles of the work with imagery. Image speaks for itself. So the image, clearly that's a metaphor because the image can't speak, but in another way it speaks for itself. It has its own language and words to describe itself through the person. Everything is something, but we don't always know what it is until much later on. And that's one of the joys of imagery, is people can take away an image, especially if it's drawn or an object, and they can ponder on it over time and suddenly realize, ah, I know why I've got that. I know why that's there as that representation of me on that day. I know why that raspberry jelly is there this morning. And what's personal is personal. So if somebody says that their penguin is flying, their penguin is flying. And if somebody says, you know, their frog is deep purple, and that's the color it is. So what's personal is personal. And that goes for those value judgments about here is a big house, even though it might look like a small house on a picture to you. So the principles in the center and round the edge are 4 simple rules. And simple rules are behaviors that we already see in the system that are generative, that help things to happen in a way that works, basically. And so that is the invitation to the image to express itself. It's noticing with childlike curiosity and with no attachment. You might notice something, the person may not be that interested. Keep yourself to yourself, meaning your assumptions, your judgments, your thinking. For those of you supervisors, yes, we can use I6, which is that inner wisdom, and yet that's a judgment call inside ourselves about what inner wisdom is there, and can we make ourselves empty and available to that process. And then reflect what is, just as you see it. So really clear, crisp, accurate reflections, and not adding bits or taking bits away when we're reflecting things for people to work with their images. So we're going to do intros, and then we're going to move into a bit more of collective dialogue. And so the first thing we'd like you to do is, I'm going to have a look at the chat while you're away, but you're going to go away for 6 minutes. If you haven't used breakout rooms before, you will have to click to get in them, but you won't have to click to come back. Nicola will bring you back. You're going to go for 6 minutes. There'll be a 2-minute warning. When you're going to be in threes, so that'll be 2 minutes each. By the time you get the warning, a third person will be talking. So it's simply to introduce yourself. That is all you have to do, is just introduce yourself to 2 other people, to get to know some of the 59 people on this call, so that just like any other CPD event, that you get some chance to mix with the people who are here. So Nicola's going to send you off now. I'll see you back in 6 minutes.
I'll see you in 6 minutes, and I'll give you a warning in 4. Jo and Shirley, back over to you.
It's an amazing experience when people come in, especially when they come back laughing and you don't know what might have happened before. So, but I hope you met some other people. Now, I'm going to assume that most people on this call are coaches, and I might assume that you might be a supervisor. And if you're, when I say I'm going to talk about you being a coach, you can interpret that word as coach, supervisor, or whatever else your practitioner role is. And thank you, Elaine, for saying in the chat about how difficult it is to end conversations in breakout rooms. You're about to do another one now, so I will give you that challenge again. And I'd seen another post from Elaine saying that she'd been using poetry, mapping, drawing and movement in some of her creative coaching sessions. However, right, we're going to go back into small groups again. But this time, before you do, just take a moment to really land in this webinar. Just breathe out. And just see what happens to your body. Take, in fact, 3 conscious breaths. So 3 breaths where the exhale is a little longer. And just notice being supported by the floor or the chair. Simply come home to yourself. Who are you as a coach? Who are you? Invite an image, any image at all. There is no right or wrong answer. An image of you as a coach. Hold on to that image, and we're going to put you in breakout rooms in a minute, and you're going to introduce yourself to each other as a coach through the image. I'm just going to check in with Shirley because she's going to introduce herself to you all now. Shirley, who are you as a coach or supervisor?
So I thought of as a coach, and the image that came is with me is I am a tree, an oak tree, a very old oak tree in a wood. And what I notice is that the weather is very, very changeable and unpredictable.
Anything else?
There's something about being very rooted and grounded. But this weather is doing all kinds of things. So sometimes I'm moving around really, really dramatically, and sometimes it's still.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Shirley. So go into your small groups and allow each other to have the space to introduce through your image. Notice your process. So we're noticing not only the image, but the process. What happened when you invited the image? Did you discount anything on the way and think, oh, I'm not having that one. I'm going to have this one over here, like me and my raspberry jelly. Or did the image come straight away? You saw Shirley as she was talking about it, that small invitation about anything else. She looked around and she found something else to tell us. So go and just play with each other and see what happens while you're in your small groups. Nicola's going to put you in small groups. You've got 9 minutes this time, so a little bit longer. And again, you will get a 2-minute warning just before the end. You don't need to do anything to come back. We will bring you back. But that box, that annoying box in the middle of the screen, you can get rid of by Xing the X or dragging it to the side. And so we'll see you back in 9 minutes.
Okay. Oh, hello everybody. Thank you. Welcome back.
Hello, welcome back. So we're interested in what did you notice? Do write in the chat, but if you have something to say that you really noticed about what it was like to use the image to introduce yourself in a different way as a coach, let us know. What did you notice? Jennifer, hi there.
Here was a fascinating, it was a lovely conversation. Thank you, Gabby. But there were two very different things. So for Gabby, she had an image and then reflected that it's an image that she's had before. Yeah. So it's quite interesting that that image has stayed with her.
Yeah.
I had an image which I immediately rejected because I didn't understand what it meant and decided to imagine another image and then had to come back to the first image because it was so strong. So I think it was just fascinating that you can have, your subconscious can keep an image and reject it. And then we had a really great conversation.
And that's a brilliant example, Jennifer, because somebody in the chat had said how to work with images. We can pull out that process. So that process of rejecting something because you didn't understand it, you could reflect on that. Is like, do I do that anywhere else? Reject something I don't understand and then have to go back and get it again. You're nodding and smiling, so I'm imagining you might recognize that process. So lovely, thanks, Jennifer. Anybody else? What did you notice?
It was around how we didn't want to own our symbol.
Oh.
So we all came up with one relatively easily, but then kind of went, oh, I'm not sure if I want to own that, and put that on. So we had a sort of debate about, well, how would it be if we did own it? So it was a really interesting conversation. Yeah.
Fascinating that you happened to be with two other people that also wanted to talk around before you got to that bit of owning it.
Yeah, but love the creativity around it, around, you know, how we see ourselves or express ourselves.
Yeah.
But, you know, is that how we really are?
Aren't we fascinating as human beings? Thank you, Lindsay. And Chris, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, similar to Jennifer actually, in terms of having an image, but then sort of almost going, oh, no, that can't be right. It almost felt too dark, and trying to find another image that will sit. But I suppose that's also the subconscious image that comes to mind first, but then the consciousness sort of trying to take over and fit into a box that suits our reality of day-to-day life. But actually, from the conversation, it's fascinating that what came to me, because I'm not a supervisor and that sort of thing. So what came to me was actually our image might change. And I know it has changed from, I've done similar things in the past, but the image might reflect our state of mind and state of situation. And where I thought it was quite dark might reflect actually how we're feeling. So it could be the same image, but a lighter image of the same, but not a darker one. But and the power of, as a coach, to recognise when you're in that place, to know to do something about it almost, and that self-reflection which we're trying to get everybody else to do is quite powerful, that we need to ourselves. So I found that quite interesting.
There's so many points, Chris. That way that we immediately evaluate things as dark or I've immediately forgotten the word that you said about that actually the image has come. It's neutral. It's holding our dreams and aspirations for the future. It may be holding fears. It may be holding a message. We don't know what it's holding, and it may immediately look as something, oh, I'm not sure I want that. But actually, if we can just get rid of all those assumptions and judgments about it, there might be something really interesting in there. So thanks, Chris. It was a great example. Anyone else? Oh, Jane. Let's see your hand.
Interesting from that, I gave my image, and when I was asked to embellish it a bit, I said, yes, I'm wearing a cloak. And one of my lovely people in my triad said, oh, it's about power, is it? And I said, no, it's a very, very colourful but very shabby cloak, because I didn't want, you know, I immediately wanted to back away from any idea that, you know, that my image was in any way connected with personal power. And that was, you know, really quite interesting. We had a terrific conversation. It was absolutely super.
And a lovely example of how, whether or not your image was about power, it's you that needs to get there. And so even if as a listener we immediately think, oh, this has got to be about power, it doesn't make any difference what we think. It's got to be when you're there and your journey, because what you're doing is you're tracing back some connection within your mind and your memory. So my idea of where you're going serves you absolutely not one jot, because you have to find that little neural pathway that takes you back. I'm going to now, Elaine, we're going to say Akester. I'm going to say, now, where are you? Oh, there you are there. You've put in the chat a couple of things about using movement and poetry and mapping. I saw you put that you're using things in a different way. I'd really love to hear from you. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot. And if you do mind, just tell me.
No, not at all. No, nice to speak to you, Jo. Well, I suppose I write poetry. I don't publish it, but I've always been a bit of a poet and writer. So when I sense and I have a discussion with somebody around that and find out that they like the spoken word, I find that either prescribing a poem or asking them to bring a poem to a coaching session, or sometimes I might, so for instance, somebody is experiencing quite a significant loss at the moment. So you know, Elizabeth Bishop, the great American poet, she has a brilliant poem about the art of losing. And there's something in poetry that validates, but it's also about the imagery that it brings into the person's mind. That's what so it validates and connects with an emotion and a feeling. and it distills it down in a beautiful way. So I find that it sometimes helps them get themselves out of their immediate situation and then look at it in a slightly different perspective, and also validates feelings. Yeah, I mean, drawing, absolutely, and for me it's around actually thinking about what it is that, sometimes it's about identifying what the barrier is, if there's barrier, and asking them to draw that out, to map it out. So a lot of the sort of systemic and constellation stuff work of John Whittington et al. And drawing things out, again, if you can support them get into that creative space and they draw it out, and then you're supporting them work with that shape, the barrier, and drawing images of where they want to be also, I find can be very useful.
Thank you, Elaine. That is just brilliant. And actually the reason I came to you is that somebody had asked in the chat earlier about, well, how do we use it in coaching? And you've given us some great ideas. You know, if people are interested in poetry, bring it in and allow those multiple levels, the words, the emotion and the imagery of the poetry, but also the drawing and art. And Shirley was going to, Shirley, you've got some things to just bring in about how we use some creative tools in coaching and in supervision.
Yeah, so I love working with creative tools, and it's particularly most lately with the various lockdowns and things that are going on, we're having to adapt those increasingly for working online. So part of it is in the instructions or the contract that you have with your people. I tend to do group supervision and use it pretty much exclusively, creative tools in that. And so, for example, I just dug out my box of crayons like this, and I would say to people beforehand, please come to the session with those to hand and some paper or some coloured paper or whatever. And during the session, we would go around and invite people to make a short drawing of what it is they want to bring today, for example. And we would use that image, which they would just show up on the screen, as the starting point for their particular session. And that can work with all levels of drawing ability. You need no drawing ability at all. The next thing I brought was just some cards. I guess some of you may work with picture images cards like these. And sometimes I've taken photographs of them and put them up a bit like we did earlier on in the day to just to use some kind of imagery for checking in or something like that. And I also invite the people to bring their own materials. So, and if they don't have cards, then they can just bring a magazine and just flick through the magazine and find a picture, or maybe they have lots of pictures, images on their phone that they can find one that links for them. So there's very easy ways to make it accessible for people. Is that enough, Jo? Because I know we're...
Yes, and I saw somebody else, Laura, said, how do we use creative tools online? And it's surprising how many people have got the most strangest things that would represent them. So you might not know that I have Oprah Winfrey on my desk. And she's just sitting here waiting for a moment to come into the story. Or on my desk, I might have Dora. Oh, she's just my favourite. She's just my what do you call her, totem for this year, Dora the Dalmatian, taking her name from Isadora Duncan, the dancer. And so I want a bit more of that free spirit that Isadora had all those years ago. And so, but however, people also have all sorts of things that they might produce. It's an everyday object about, oh, I'm feeling a bit like a ruler today, or say, who knows what they're going to say. So use what's around. And incorporating tools in coaching. I've recently worked with a tech company where it's been easy to work in imagery, especially in teamwork, and how are we working together as a team, and you can find a collective image that people can be parts of a collective image. So lots of ways, and I've seen some people nodding. Would anyone like to give us another example of how they've used creative images, creative approaches in coaching? maybe not.
Hi, it's Wendy here.
Hi Wendy, where have you gone to? I saw you for a moment and then I lost you again.
I thought I would just turn my
phone
on so that, because I was raising my hand, but you couldn't see me, I don't think. So I just wanted to share that I do quite a lot of coaching outside. So I live quite near to Liesl Gardens. And so we do a lot of coaching, walking and talking, and that works really well, using some of the things that we see around us. And then I've also just recently copied a colleague who often coaches in art galleries, and using some of the imagery in art galleries to explore issues that the clients want to. So I just wanted to share that because there's another couple of examples.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So outside in nature, so many things out there that we can project onto. So when we're working with images, we're projecting a part of ourselves onto the image. And so again, why we need that particular care. The box on, not the box, the little circle about keep yourself to yourself, part of that is not touching people's imagery if we're in person, if we get a chance to do that again, because it is a projected part of themselves out, whether it's an acorn or something they've picked up from outside, that we're able to externalize some inquiry into the language of the metaphor, and then to really hear ourselves in a different way. How often our coachees go round and round the same issue before they find a way out. And so imagery is just providing a space where they can hear themselves talk differently. And often people so quickly go, gosh, I never even knew I was noticing that about myself. So music, Jane is using music for powerful imagery and used this in a discussion about values. How else are people using creative approaches in their work? Somebody's using mural as online whiteboard. Of course, art galleries that Wendy said. Elaine said about plasticine. Plasticine is awesome to use, especially, so often people translate plasticine into Play-Doh or clay. And of course, Play-Doh and clay are particular things and perhaps have their own qualities. But I find plasticine has particular, it's a particular experience. It's a really rock solid thing to start with. So you have to do quite a lot of working of plasticine to make it move anywhere. And so, you know, you can use it as just seeing what comes as you make the plasticine work. It also is really not necessarily comfortable on your hands. It's not necessarily comfortable on my hands, and people have different reactions to working with plasticine and clay. And of course that takes us right back to being 4 or 5 when we go into nursery, and that's the place that we do most of that really tactile stuff around clay and sand and different mediums. So coming back to that time, I've used squish therapy dough. Not me, somebody in the chat, I missed who that was then. Andrea, squish therapy dough. It's different smells. It's an adult kind of Play-Doh. And Gerard, bread dough. Now Gerard brought up a question. In supervision, how much would we share with clients of our imagery? And of course, that is a question, isn't it? Would we share our imagery? And that would be, for me, the same question as any kind of self-disclosure. Is it in service of the client for me to share this? If it is, and you have a sense that you've got something that's worth sharing, then do it. And if you think it's clean and clear and of the relationship, if you've got some sense it comes from you, from some of your frame of reference, then probably not. And I just missed somebody saying vision boards, Lego, and different approaches. So I wonder, could you say how you've used creative tools in cross-cultural contexts? Totally. So I would say that let me have a think about how I'm going to say this. I'll come to you as well, Shirley, because you'll probably have something to say about this. Both of us work internationally. So the creative tools that I might have around me are in and of my culture. Not necessarily all of them. I have a range of tools because I've been building the things around me over years. And I have a particular interest and attention on inclusivity and diversity. So I would imagine that I would have quite a good range of cards that demonstrate different backgrounds and diversity in all sorts of ways through the cards and the objects and the Lego models that I have. That's not always the case. Sometimes our toolbox is out of our culture. And so if we are working cross-culturally, it's important that perhaps people find things in their culture, but also on their desk, out of their own surroundings, or could bring, as Shirley said, a little toolbox with them that is more immediate things from their own living circumstances. But I think working cross-culturally, what's really important is not interpreting. It's important however we work, but always when we're working cross-culturally, because we have no idea the meaning of something for someone. But one of the circles on the heart diagram is notice with childlike curiosity, and for me that's where that comes in. So somebody has brought let me borrow Oprah for a minute. So if somebody has brought Oprah, instead of my assumptions on what Oprah means to me, is really asking, so how come Oprah is here today? Now, at this particular time in our history, we might have many reasons why Oprah would be here today, but it's not for us for the person, the coach or supervisor, to know what those reasons are. It's for the person who's brought whatever it is to be able to say, this is my relationship with this object or this person today, and this is why she or he or the animal is here today, and this is what it might mean in my culture, but this is what it is meaning for me today. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Anybody else got any idea? Oh, Shirley, I said I was going to come to you.
Yeah, so most of my group work is very mixed nationalities and cultural backgrounds. One of the things that comes to my mind is the use of the phrase "any way you like" in the instructions. So make a model of what you're going to do today, draw a picture of your topic or theme that you're bringing today, any way you like. So you give permission for any kind of way of creating that's comfortable for the person. The other thing I was just going to say about the use of language is because we're working more through other mediums, I really love the fact that it compensates. I really feel the whole creative thing is such a leveler for if you have people of different shared language abilities. So if you're working in English, for example, as I do, then most of the people are not speaking English as their first language. So this way of working creatively, it really helps to level the playing field for everyone in the group, which I feel is really then honouring every person's contribution equally.
Thank you. I was looking in the chat as you were talking, Shirley, and Gerard raising that to really check in with people. I thought there was a brilliant comment that he made, is when I'm calling Oprah, I might be meaning Oprah Winfrey, but I might not. And so really always checking in those specifics about what people are talking about, and particularly if we're working cross-culturally. I'm also distracted by Nicola noticing that Elaine had talked about movement, And so, Elaine, I'm going to just give you a little challenge here, if you're up for it, is if you can think of something that you'd like us to do in some kind of movement exercise that just takes a really short time, I'll come back and ask you. But don't feel under any pressure, because I can also think of one myself. But if you want to, give us a thumbs up. So give us a thumbs up on that bottom screen, reactions. You can give us a thumb and I'll come back to you. So it's 3:15 and we do have to finish by past. It just has flown past.
Yeah.
What else would you like to talk about in this last 5 or 10 minutes while Elaine's getting a thinking hat on for a little movement exercise for us all?
Hello. I asked for the cross-cultural dimension, and and thank you for what you both said on that, because any artifacts, any piece of creative manifestation has values, has context. It speaks to all of that. Yeah. And I was very mindful of the conversation that is happening during these last couple of weeks. Yeah. Say a piece of statue means something different to different people according to the past and the present, according to the individual experience. And part of that individual experience is a part of the collective experience. So the debate we are having now, live debate, which is about a piece of a statue manifestation of that piece of creativity, is not neutral. No. It's full of meanings, it's full of hidden context.
What a brilliant example about how that metaphor, that statue, or statues, means different things to different people, changes over time, yes, and can be immensely powerful. And so using, seeing that collective and personal represented in the metaphor, yeah, totally. Those brilliant observations. Anything, Shirley, to pick up at this point?
Elaine said she's good to go as well. When she...
Oh, is she? Oh,
let's go there, yeah.
Great, okay. Elaine is going to absolutely magnificently give us an impromptu movement task. So over to Elaine. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. And I was thinking this through, and there's 2 ways of doing this, but I'm just going to go for one and just see how this goes. So what I would like you to do is, if it suits you, to just close your eyes momentarily. Yes. And just notice your breathing, and a bit like what Jo was encouraging you to do, to just be in the moment, as we are all here now together as a community of interested coaching practitioners, people with our own lives to live. So just hooking into that overall sensation, and to hook into the overriding emotion that you're feeling right now. And then once you've identified what that overriding sense of emotion is, to begin to draw your hands towards that area where you feel that particular emotion. And for some people, it might be around the heart, for other people, the stomach. It might be anywhere, wherever you feel your hands drawn to begin just to connect with that felt sense of the emotion right now. And then as you connect with that emotion more deeply, I'd like you to encourage you to get a bit more adventurous and expansive with the movement of the hand. So from where it is, wherever that is on your body, to actually get a bit more expansive, you may need to move your hands away from that part of your body and really connect with the movement that your body wants to make. Ignore what your mind is telling you, just go with what you somatically want to do. If that is actually no more movement than you are doing now, that's fine. But I would encourage you to just get a bit more expansive and creative and engage more deeply with that movement. If you want to leave your chair, leave your chair. If you want to move your head, move your head. But just connect with that feeling. And assuming it's some sort of a positive, uplifting feeling, go with it. And even if it's not, be okay with that as well. And I'm just going to allow you to do that on your own for the next 30 seconds. Whatever you want to do, follow your body, what it wants to do. And as we come to the end of that short practice, just to note how your body feels right now. And reconnect with that felt sense of that emotion. And just notice, has it changed or shifted at all? Has it deepened or is it lighter? Or actually has another emotion or feeling come into play? And whatever it is, be okay with that. Enjoy the sense of movement in your body, the only one you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. It was absolutely super. Really appreciate you taking that. Really lovely. I can speak to myself that a whole load of tension has just gone in my belly. That I'm really cool. So, but what I really noticed as well is, going back to the beginning of what I said today, creative tools are really good fun. There's something to introduce. They look playful and innocent, but actually they're deeply personal, sensitive, and really require daring. You may have noticed in yourself about, you know, whether you had a little discomfort in the notion of moving around on a dialogue seminar, or those people that spoke in the early group about we weren't sure whether we wanted to own our images. It requires a lot of daring to work with creative tools, and yet the riches that are in there are really worth it, both for the coach and the client, or the supervisor and the supervisee, because you never know what messages are just outside our awareness. Haven't really talked much about the neuroscience behind working with creative tools, but there's a whole other topic about getting out of that cognitive thinking and into some creative space, and then being able to make the link. So not saying cognitive thinking doesn't have its place, but just coming around something a different way, just coming in through a different door and then bringing it back into, so what is our coaching question today? And how does this inform us around this? So again, back to the beginning, saying you to work out your relationship with creativity as well. We have got some information for you. Shirley is our person for this.
Yeah, so I think we want to go to that pink slide, Nicola.
Oh, yes, we want to go. Yes, we want to know, Shirley, what did you do too?
Yeah, so slide which I use sometimes for where are you arriving, what colour are you arriving, and people can stamp that. So yeah, so if you're, quite a few of you stamped the I'm a newbie at this at the beginning, and so I was going to take just a second or two to talk about how I developed my creative coaching skills. Some of it was in my training, for sure. Then when I did my supervision training, there was some in that too. And it really fits, you know, there's a thing about who you are is how you coach, or who you are is how you supervise. The working creatively really resonated with me, because I feel I'm a very artsy, creative person, and so it just felt like an extension of what kind of works for me, or what I'm interested in and like to play in. So it made for a more playful way of doing my work. So the first thing I did was really find a supervisor who would role model it, and also role model it online. And yeah, I think that's where Jo and I started this journey a bit, really. There are a couple of books, and Nicola's going to give you the titles of those in the stuff that's coming later. So of course you can learn from books too. There's a couple of courses and workshops that sometimes focus more on creative approaches. So if you're embarking on that, or indeed creating courses, I know some of you are here for that reason, to what extent you want to build that into your curriculum. And Jo and I have some workshops coming up shortly, which anyone's welcome to join, or if you hear about others, do share them with us. Or maybe you have some other ideas of how to build your skills in this kind of area.
I was going to say that, Shirley, our workshops, what we're doing in our workshops is really focusing on experience. So experience and how to work with images in coaching and supervision. So not just finding ways to allow images or to use the tools, but working with them as a coach and a supervisor. And I don't know of anybody else doing anything quite like that. What else do we want to say?
Yeah, somebody's typed in another conversational session like this would be great.
And yet Michelle's got some techniques in her book. Jackie's written about writing in there, and Elaine and others were talking about writing, and Jackie's got some writing examples in there. And I did have two books here, but I don't have them. So are we done with this slide? Are you done with this bit?
Yeah, I think so. The book details will be in the stuff that comes out afterwards, so that all the titles are there, the creative supervision and inspiring creative supervision books.
I've put them on the link for everybody as well. So the link.
Ah, super, thank you.
Please don't go before filling out the link. But on there you'll find the links to the books that we spoke about as well, and also Shirley and Jo would like to remain connected with you if you'd like to remain connected with them too. So there's information about how to do that as well. So
on the Eventbrite page, we're in Crucial Difference, and you'll see all.
We have a slide with that on, so it might make it easier.
Oh, it's just because I can see everyone now. We'll do the slides as well, and we'll stick that up. I'm just going to tell you.
Okay, sorry.
On our Crucial Difference Eventbrite page, you'll see our imagery workshops. Oh yes, there's this. We've got a code, EMCC without the quotation marks. Will give you a £15 discount on something, and that it'll also give you a discount on the supervision group should you want to join a supervision group. But if you just want to, if you want to have a conversation with us, drop us a line on LinkedIn. You can find either of us on LinkedIn. We're always happy to have conversations or to do workshops for anyone else for that matter. And you know, this has been mostly focused on dialogue, but our usual way of working is lots of experiential work and having it come out of there. So I think that's everything. Nicola, I think it's over to you for the last 2 minutes.
Yes, 2 minutes, and wow, how to follow that. You have taken us on a journey of creativity, which has taken us from learning about stamping on Zoom to getting up and moving around, which has been fantastic, and thank you so much for that as well. I think that We've got some new examples. It's always good to meet other people in breakout rooms and hear what they're doing as well. So I'm pleased. I've had a couple of private messages as well saying, you know, thanks for the breakout rooms too, which is really nice. But Jo and Shirley, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really do appreciate it. I'll follow up after this as well. I'll email everybody because I've got the Eventbrite sign up as well. So I'll drop that form and all the links in the email to you as well. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one as well. And I really appreciate you having the time to come today, and to Jo and Shirley for just being brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you to Elaine as well for joining us. Yeah, thank you.
Very much so. So
join with us on LinkedIn and say hello, and see you again.
See you later.
I'll see
Ciao.
you.
Bye.